Hi guys, fitting a scope on a Ruger M77 Mark 1. Mark 1's got a tang safety, so there's the dead giveaway. So the first thing that I do, I center pop the rings. So what I want to do is I want to do the one on the left and the other one on the right. And all I'm doing is I'm putting in a little pock mark right there. So I'm just getting a small little pock mark. And the reason I'm doing that is that I don't want these two caps to get swapped around between this ring and that ring. And that's why I'm doing it on two opposite sides. So getting the two pock marks on the rings is not only about not getting the two caps mixed up, but also about putting on the cap the wrong way around. Once you've lapped the rings, you want to make sure that the cap goes onto the correct base, and you also want to make sure it goes on the right orientation. A lot of people debate the necessity to mark the rings with a little pop mark, and the reason is if you take like these Weaver Grand Slams, which are steel rings, this is how they're packaged. So they're just loose. So there's no idea what the orientation of the cap versus the base of the ring is, or even if it's in the right place. Does this cap belong to that base or not? You don't know that. A lot of the other rings, like this Burris set, they come pre-assembled, and you can assume, if nobody's tampered with this packaging, that that cap belongs to that ring in that orientation. Whether that's important, I don't know. I know for a fact the South African company Thor Engineering, their rings are very similar to these Burris rings, and they've actually got a hash mark across the ring there to make sure that you get the cap on the right orientation. It's got a hash mark across there, and the ring is only split after it's been line bored, and then they split the ring, and then they got that hash mark to make sure it goes on the right way. That still doesn't solve the problem of getting the two caps mixed, because the hash marks are all in the same place. The M70 Ruger has got integral dovetails and scope mounts right there with proprietary rings for those rifles. And the way that works, you can see that pulls and clamps onto the dovetail, and that rounded section fits into there, and then you got the lug that goes in there, which stops the ring from moving back and forth. The other important bit on a Ruger is that the rear ring is lower than the front ring. So you got to have two different heights of rings. So this one will go to the back, and that one will go to the front. This torque spec on these is 30 inch-pounds. So that's what I'm going to give them. And just one more click for good luck. Okay, I torque up those screws, and I don't really care in which orientation that stands. Some of the OCD guys, they will overpower the screw to get the slot to face north-south. Guys, you're standing the chance of breaking that off. If you've got that OCD, fit the screw, file it back at the back until you get that. But that's function over 4. Now with the rings on, we get to the age-old debate of whether it's necessary to lap rings or not. Now, I'm of the opinion that all rings should be lapped. I cannot see what harm it does. Obviously, you can overlap them and then lose your clamping force, but if you do it moderately, there's no harm in lapping rings. So there are debates about people saying that if you're dealing with, for example, this AR-10, which has got a fixed rail on the top of the receiver, and you're dealing with a one-piece mount, that it's not necessary. But you can have flex there or bend there, and maybe it's more forgiving. Again, what harm would it do? Also, when you're dealing with a one like on this muzzleloader, where you're dealing with a one-piece Picatinny at the bottom, the argument can be that you got a solid mount there and you don't need to lap. But you don't know how straight that is. You don't know if, like in the case of the AR10, if you got some bow on the Picatinny and now you're causing flex in your mount, you wouldn't know that. What you can also have is like on this old Mauser action, which is a K98. That is at a slight taper, and you always got to do some fitting on that back base. Some of the more commercial ones, they've actually machined it flat, but there's always slight inconsistencies in heights between the front and the back, therefore important to lap. The other problem that you have in not lapping is you can have minute tolerance differences between the front bridge and the front ring and the back ring. You can have minute differences between the bases and minute differences between the rings. And any one of those on their own might not be a problem, but you could have a stacking problem where you're stacking those tolerance differences, and then you end up with a big variable at the end. A lot of guys say just use these indicators. This is a wheeler set, and I haven't clamped them down. I'm just using it as a demo. And you see if it meets. Now this one doesn't meet. The bottom one's slightly lower than that one. But if I can exaggerate it, I can get it like that, which is clearly exaggerated, but that's kind of a false positive. The points are meeting up. Now, if you're talking about a couple of thou, where you got that out, it's going to look as if it all lines up, although they're not. So I don't really care what this is, I just lap them. Now, the lapping bar has got two positions where you can put the handle in the middle or at the back. I like to put it in the middle, and the reason for that is I'm trying to put even force on the front ring and the back ring. My theory is if I put it in here, I can be pushing down on the back ring, causing the bar to kind of have that effect on the front ring, and I'm not getting even lapping force on both rings. I use a Q-tip or a cotton bud or an earbud, whatever you'd like to call it, and apply just a very, very thin film of lapping compound onto each ring. Set your lapping bar into your rings, put your caps on, make sure you got them the right orientation, as well as the right ring onto the correct base. Obviously using your little pock marks or your little pop marks that you've punched in with the center punch to get that. I like to get the gaps even on the scope rings. Okay, so I got it all even. It's too tight to move, so I slack off just a little bit on the rings. And I go forward and backwards and side to side. Be careful not to run into the ring with your handle, because you'll leave a shiny mark if you do that. At the same time, I'm trying to use the entire length of the lapping rod, because I don't want to wear out only one section of it. I want it to kind of wear evenly all along. Now, one debate that I've heard was, don't lap the caps, only lap the base of the ring. I've tried to wrap my mind around that, and I cannot get my mind around it. So I get when you, let's say your rings are leaning this way, and now you're lapping them that way. If you've got enough slop on those screw holes for the cap to just follow the scope, that would make some sense in not lapping the caps. But where that screw ties down in the bottom of that hole, that is cut square to the rest of the ring. So you're always forcing that cap back to the axis that that hole is drilled in. So it makes no sense to me in not lapping the caps. I think it's just a shortcut. You're not having to tie down the caps. I add tension to the caps just a little at a time on one side, and next time I'll do the other side. Okay, I'll pull the caps and check it. Getting the lapping compound off, and you can see we haven't made a lot of progress on that. So what you're looking for is you're looking for at least 70% contact. And on this one, we're only contacting on the back half, and that just shows you that this ring is not level. That one, we're also contacting on the back half, nothing over there. So on this one, we've probably got about 25% contact, and on this one, we got that half, but there's a spot there where it's not, so I would say 40-45%. So we need to carry on going. So if you're not doing this, you're expecting the scope to take up those inconsistencies between the two rings. Got it lapped one more time. Let's see what it looks like. There you go. I'm going to call that good. This is the back cap. I've got at least 70, 75, maybe 80% coverage there. And on the front cap, 80 to 90% contact. Got the rings all cleaned up. I like to just wipe them down with some Ballistol. You don't want any of the lapping compound to stay back. I also clean the screws off in case some of the lapping compound got into the threads. Then there's another issue that you know, a lot of guys like to make an issue about, and that's whether to put finish, you know, some sort of finish on there. I don't, and I don't care what finish you quick bluing you use, whether it's Brownells or Ballistol or Permablue, whatever you use. None of this is offers any metal protection. It just colors the metal black, and it's there for cosmetic reasons. And I'm of the opinion that all of these are acidic, and I do not want to introduce some sort of an acid that can cause rust there going forward. The scope's on you're not going to see that. Making it black is not giving it any protection. So what's the sense? To me, putting in that any cold blue there is probably creating a risk that you can get some sort of corrosion or oxidization in there. So I just leave it as is. To level the rifle, or level the scope to the rifle, I use the Wheeler little bubble level with the barrel mount that goes onto the barrel. You get the rifle level, so get that bubble in the middle, and then you put this on the barrel, and you get that bubble in the adjust that so it corresponds with that. I use the first flat surface that I can get. In this case, this rifle's got this flat rib on the top. That's what I use. Like on this Remington, that's got the rounded, it's got a rounded action front and back. There's no flat on it. As soon as I get a flat, that's a Leupold base. As soon as that base goes on there, I'll use that flat. I don't like to use that because any variances or any tolerances that you can pick up from manufacture between each level, when you stack those, you can get a lot of variance. When I install scopes for other people. I do not know how they hold the gun. I just try and whether it's a left-handed shooter or right-handed shooter, I just try and get the scope square to the rifle. To get the eye relief right, I like to use the shooter or the owner, close his eyes, get the rifle up on his shoulder, get comfortable, you know, behind the rifle, the way he'll grip it, open his eyes, and then expect to get a full view on you know, on the lens. Generally, I found that kind of the ring, when that's in line with the trigger, that's kind of middle of the road for most people. At the same time, I try and stay at least 2 millimeters away from where the bell starts. So in this case, we are not going to be able to come back far enough, and it should be okay. It's slightly, it needs to come back about ½ an inch, and that would have been perfect, but it'll work where it is. Before I lapped the rings, I had this dry fitted to make sure that this particular scope and the ring height is going to work out and that the bolt handle is going to clear. I got the bubble on the turret there, on the turret adjuster. And what I found is, as you tighten these, it kind of rolls the scope. So I get the bubble, get it close, you know, from the one up front there. As you tighten this one, you'll roll the scope this way. If you tighten that one, you'll roll the scope that way. So I'll do a little bit this way, try and get the bubble in the middle. As soon as it starts moving too much, I'll do the other end and roll the bubble back, and do this side and roll the bubble back, and kind of get it center with the one, and then jack up the other one on the other side. This dog spec on these is 20 inch-pounds. So what I'll do is I'll put my torque wrench on 10. So I kind of walk it into the 20, and I'll do that one, cross over to that one, cross back to this one, cross to that one, and then I'll jack the torque wrench up to 20 to the spec, and then just run them again. I just feel that it's important to kind of get this ring kind of settled down, you know, and rather than kind of pulling on one and then pulling, and then you don't have even force on the screws. It is important also to run the screws more than once. So this first one will take a bit of turn, then I'll move over to that one over there, and it's going to turn some. And now this one's going to go a lot, because this one's already taken a lot of the torque. And that one's also going to go some, because its body is already holding up. And when I come back here, this one's going to move some more, because that one's now taking some of the torque. Not much, but it did. And the same for that one. Not much, but it moved. So I just do them all kind of 3 times, just so they all take the same amount of force. When you're done, it's important to bring your torque wrench back to 0 setting, or to the lowest setting, not lower than that, because you might unhook the spring. That way you just preserve the calibration on your wrench. There you go. Just about perfect clearance all around, and the bolt handle also just clears the back of the scope. There's a variety of bore sighters you can use. I just use this little laser one that you put into the barrel on that, from the front on that taper, and they got different collets. You got a bit of a taper there, and they'll flare out to go snug on the barrel, and then snug on that taper, and then just turn the two to coincide. It's not supposed to be accurate. It's not supposed to be the final adjustment. It's to get you on paper on 25 yards or so. The important bit though is And it doesn't matter what the bore sighter is. Any bore sighter that you put down the muzzle from the front of the gun, make sure when you pull this out that this little collar comes out and doesn't stay back in there. Make sure you take this out and you don't go to the range and shoot your first shot. You'll blow the gun up. So I normally pull the bolt and look down the bore to make sure that there's no obstruction, that stayed back. It's been many bore sighters have blown up guns. Hope you guys found that interesting. Stay safe. We talk again. Cheers.